Okay, we've got the recording going on. Let me see if I can get this thing working right. Okay. Good seeing everybody this morning. Eric, good to see you. How you doing? Sarah, Samantha, Melissa. So this week, really, and this is the production coaching call we're going to do every week at 10 o'clock now. We moved some things around because I thought, actually, one of my leaders, Matthew, talked about this. Having the coaching call on Monday may set you up for a more powerful week, taking some of these things into action that we talk about during the week, and then keep that continuity being in the first of the week rather than on Thursday. And I agreed enough that we changed it. And so we're doing agent attraction coaching on Thursday, production coaching on Mondays. You're welcome to invite guests. This is open for everybody. We'll record the calls when we're in the training format in the beginning like this for the first 15, 20 minutes, whatever it happens to be. And then we'll take the recording off and we'll go into more private coaching. So if you have a private question or something that's, within the confines of this group, it's not going to be out to the world. So we do have that layer of, vulnerability on the coaching call where you could ask a question or ask something that you don't want everywhere. Okay. So this particular piece is, we'll push it everywhere. This is something of value and something that will create, more people looking into the coaching piece that we want to help. Okay. Anyway, great seeing everybody. So without any further ado, I'm going to start with my content and topics that I prepared for today's call. And number one, we're absolutely seeing a market shift in the last 30 days. So, but is there a lot of noise in the space about it? Absolutely. What is, is it recession? Is it the world is crumbling? Is it the 2008 bubble? Is it the dot-com meltdown that we saw earlier that in late 90s related to the crypto? There's just so much going on right now. It's content overload. And so number one, in my world of priorities is you have to be contacting your SOI right now at great lengths. Like, make it your mission to make sure that everybody in your database gets talked to in the next 15, 30, 45 days, whatever that time frame is, depending on how big your database is. I have clients with 1,000 people in their database. You can't contact them in 2 weeks without doing some kind of video. I think this is the time that you make that first or that personal phone call and you go, hey, Eric Beachy, eXp Realty, just wanted to follow up with you real quick and talk to you about the market. Nothing real specific, but call me back when you're free, right? That's a message. And then when we get on the call with them, really give them some specifics of what's going on in the market that you feel confident with, that you can really be the knowledge broker here, because this is really what's going to separate us, the posers or the amateurs away from the professionals in this turning market. The market is turning. It's turned, right? It's not like it's going to happen. It turned. And so the depth of that, the breadth of that, nobody knows. Nobody has a crystal ball. But I like focusing on all the top bright minds in the industry. And I've listened to probably 15 podcasts and interviews and economic reports and all that over the last 2 weeks to try and wrap my head around it personally, because I have people relying on what I say in a coaching element or in a leadership element of it being truthful and gospel. And the last thing I want to do is start creating panic and doom and gloom. That's not my style. I'm an opposite of that, but I'm also a realist, right? All the things that are going on right now, there's too many things stacked up for it not to progress downhill. The only variable of that is inventory. If inventory stayed very low, then all this other stuff would be less impactful. But as we start, and we've already seen an increasing of inventory, less offers, longer time on the market, all these things add up to, we've got a prolonged time frame in front of us, right? Unless something changes. I think personally, the one thing that most people agree on is rates. Rates are going to continue to go up. That's the one thing that could change this, is because in every recession, rates go down, right? A recession is defined as 2 quarters of negative domestic growth growth, gross product, right? So we already had the first quarter of loss, basically. So if we have another second quarter, that would effectively put us in recession by the definition. Not everybody will feel it the same, but that's a definition. That's what people want to be talking about, right? So as we micro look at our markets, we want to follow that inventory trend in my humble opinion, because that is going to lead to all these other things happening. And if we start moving from 2 days of sellable inventory, right? Saturation has been 2 to 5 days in most markets. When we start moving into a month, which we've already moved right past some of these markets like Salt Lake, from 2 days to over 6 weeks of inventory in 30 days. So when we see an abrupt stop to the market in that particular segment, and then now it's starting to trickle and come back again because it had a reaction, right? They had a 25 or 30% decrease in offers and contracts and all these things in that short period of time. So it super inflated that time frame. In just a couple of weeks, they went to 6 weeks and almost 2 months of inventory. So as we start seeing that climb, if that stays that way, then we know that we're going to start turning into that buyer's market around 4 months. And then we are a buyer's market at 6 months of inventory. Now, is it going to happen the same in Fort Lauderdale as it does in Sacramento? Absolutely not. Right? That you're going to see this all over the place being a different impact in certain markets, whether it's a lot of construction, whether it's a second home market, whatever it may be. Right? So again, no doom and gloom. This is factual stuff at this point. What we're seeing that's happening in the market, it may not be felt by you because you're still getting 6 offers on the house, but was it 20? And maybe you're not getting any offers for the first 10 days and you're freaking out, right? So like I talked about on last week's coaching call, one of the most important factors are going to be your pricing moving forward in your real estate business, right? So as a listing agent, you've got to be pricing these correctly, which is at market, not perspective of the market continuing to increase. We have to anticipate the market probably decreasing. So our CMA has to take a snapshot of what it is right now in true value, and then maybe hedge it off a little bit, right? That's a conversation we have to have with our sellers. So SOI, sphere of influence, and your database, your past clients, these are the ones that you really, this is your A list. You've got to be reaching out to them right now. I think this is like critical territory. This is, in my opinion, as important as it was in the first 30 days of COVID, when nobody knew what was happening and we needed to reach out to our clients to check on them personally, as well as check on them financially and professionally, right? So we had to have that blend of that. I think now is that time. We've had a couple incredibly, record-setting years in real estate. What goes up must come down. The soft landing they're talking about, they're trying to balance all this with inflation, with interest rates. They're trying to balance all this so they can raise rates enough to cut down on inflation. And the soft landing they're talking about is having the economy kind of land softly instead of going straight down and then straight up and have all these massive swings in the markets. But again, factual, if you look at it, our stock market has posted losses for the first time in 21 years for 7 straight weeks. That's the first time in 21 years that we've seen losses 7 straight weeks. Crypto, you see what kind of a shit show crypto is right now with some of these going to zero, Terra. I don't know nothing about it. I need to learn, right? This was a wake-up call for me to go, okay, I don't understand what that means. How does something where billions go to zero? Where's that money? Who still has it? Where are they at? I don't know. All right. So I'm committed to learning that for my own sake. And so I can be educated in the space. It may not be on your radar. But when you're having conversations with people, I think there's a lot of scar tissue from 2008, honestly. There's scar tissue from 2008 to 2010. Prior to that, the last recession and real estate bubble we had, if you will, was 1992 and it lasted quite a long time, lasted almost 7 years to 99, right? So we had that 6 or 7 year time frame between 92 and 99 that the real estate market really, really took a hit. And it was the first time in decades that it kind of went backwards. And it pales in comparison to what happened in 2008. But again, that was a super inflated, and some of the agents on this call may not even been in the real estate market in 2008. So you have to lean on some of us that have been through it and lean on some of the people that saw this happen. The difference between, and this is where you become the expert with your SOI, the difference between 2008 and now was strictly incredibly loose lending practices. I mean, if you could fog a mirror, you got a loan. And I knew people getting $700,000, $800,000 loans in Sonoma County that literally stated income loans. They didn't have anything that would allow them to qualify, but yet they did because of the stated income loans and the loose lending practices that we had back in 05, 6, and 7. So it created that effect of, imploding of the market because these big banks folded up. And we had, trillions of losses and foreclosures and everything else. We don't have that now. Remember, statistically, every homeowner in America has an over $300,000 average appreciation or equity in their house. Think about that. The average across the US is 300,000. That's a massive number. And I haven't validated that number. I've heard that number twice now, at 311,000, 310,000 average equity in the home for USA homeowners. Don't take my word for it. Validate it. Look it up if necessary, right? But when I hear those kind of numbers, if we could be that education broker to your clients by saying, hey, what happened in 2008 was kind of an anomaly. We don't expect that to happen. Now, the market is super inflated. We've had massive appreciation. Now we've got massive inflation. Gas prices and food prices touch everybody, right? Touch everybody. We've got interest rates. They're almost promising going up again another couple times. They've talked about 8 price raises in 2022 and into 2023, 8 interest rate increases. I personally think that's going to stop after the next 1 or 2 because they're doing so much negative impact to the economy. It seems like they didn't expect that, which is duh. But when you do these increases, and we talked about it, another statistic is typically when you raise the rates 0.5%, so 50 basis points, they go from 3 to 3.5 or whatever, you affect 10% of the buyers in the market. So we had 2 of those in the last 30 days, which took out effectively 20% of the buyers out of the market. So if inventory is at X and the buyers are Y, when you remove 20% of that, you're going to have a yield between the days on the market and all the available buyers, right? So those are just factual statistics. Education-wise with your clients, this is where it becomes really powerful of knowing what's going on in the market. So a conversation with your seller may sound something like this. Maybe it's an SOI call, right? And maybe, Eric, do you mind if I do a role play with you?
Sure.
Hey, and you're going to be one of my SOI, one of my sphere of influence, sold your house a few years ago, 10 years ago, whatever it is, okay? So, hey, ring, ring. Eric, this is Randy Byrd, eXp Realty. How are you doing?
Long time, Randy. I'm doing all right. Yourself?
It's been a while, and sorry for the delay. It's just been the wild, wild west the last couple of years in real estate, as you probably saw. So do you have just a couple quick minutes?
Absolutely.
Hey, Eric, over the last couple of weeks, I've been just doing nothing but gathering data, really trying to look at what's going on. You've probably seen what's happening in the market with both inflation on the front end of the economic outlook and forecast, but also in housing. We've had a couple rate increases over the last 30 days. Have you been watching and paying attention to this?
Yeah, it's kind of everywhere. So yeah.
It is. And there's also a lot of disinformation. So what I thought I'd do is give you just some rundown of what's happened hyper locally, right? Because what you see in New York and Texas is not the same to what we're seeing here in Salem, Oregon. Would you agree? So what we're seeing here locally is we're seeing still a very brisk real estate market. Average day on the market still very low. We call it saturation analysis, how many months of inventory there is, meaning that if no more inventory came on the market, how many months would it take to sell that off? That's increased 4 or 5 times in the last 30 days, but it's still very low historically. We were running, almost about a week of inventory. Now we're creeping up towards a month. It's still very low in any spectrum, but it is impactful to you because that market is moving that direction with rate increases and some of these other things. So we're still in a strong seller's market. If you've had any intention of selling, now is the absolute best time. Matter of fact, it was 3-4 weeks ago. So that time's passed. But because of lack of inventory, we're still at the very top of this crest. We do expect things to continue downward as we see inventory increasing and rates continue to increase. Every 0.5 point of rate increase, we lose about 10% of the buyers. So you can see how that's going to incrementally affect the market. And other than that, we're very optimistic that there's a lot of equity in the homes. Average homeowner has about 300,000 in equity. Do you know roughly what your home equity is, if you had to guess?
It's a bit higher than that, but yeah, it's been good seeing the increase.
That's awesome. The good thing, Eric, is we don't see a massive downswing like we saw in 08. Again, we have a lot of scar tissue from that, but really it was a different market. So we may see a little of adjustment. Nobody has a crystal ball, but if we see a 10 or 15% decrease in valuations, I think that's completely expected because it's ramped up so fast, so much. But I think you're preserved there. Do you have any interest in selling or know what your house is worth at all?
We've thought about it. I try to stay up on my house, but I don't know the exact value. So
okay,
nice to know that.
Yeah, I'll provide that for you. No problem. So any other questions about the economy, about real estate, housing, either locally or nationally? I'm your source for that. Is there anything I could do to help you with that or answer any questions?
I think the biggest question is if I were to sell right now with the market being high, but it hasn't adjusted to a buyer's market yet, where does that leave me on the back end?
Yeah. So if you sold, let's just say you sold in 30 days, all cash, we closed escrow, and now you're sitting on a pile of cash and no home, you're a seller, you're in a seller's market still. So you're going to pay more for the houses now. But I think there's an opportunity because the buyer is gaining a little bit of horsepower as we progress. They don't have what we saw 3-4 years ago, meaning, we're waiving inspections. There's still a lot of things in the market that are kind of transitory between those two buyer and seller markets, but you're in a declining market. So you're going to have more power as you progress. So there may be an option for you to rent and take a look. Maybe it's living with somebody. There are a lot of options. Maybe these are no good for you, but there are options, right? So my question is, if you have 600,000 in equity and would you rather sell and take that 600 grand and call it yours because it's only yours when you sell it? It's not yours in the house, right? And then sit on that cash cow of money until you find the next opportunity, and maybe what pain points that would create for the next 6 or 12 months while you find the new place, right? So those are the things that only you could decide, but I'm happy to help you through those answers.
Appreciate that.
So if you had to guess, Eric, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being like, you want your 600 grand, you don't want to lose even 50 grand of that equity, and then you take a risk on the other side, where are you in that risk category? Like 10 being you're wanting the 600 grand no matter what, and a 1 being, we're really not interested in selling without something else already.
I'm teetering right in the middle right there. I mean, we like our house, but I don't like losing money. So,
like a 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think you're a candidate to sell right now then.
Mm-hmm.
I'd sit tight and I'd watch this market. Now, if you find something you absolutely love, we could talk about structure again, but you being like a 5 in your words, I'd sit tight and I'd watch what's going on.
Fair
okay.
enough.
So if you said I was a 9, I would have a different language.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
And by the way, if you're trying to falsely motivate them, you're going to be outed, right? They're going to know that, right? You have truly be finding out what they want and following true with that. Does that make sense? Thank you for helping with that, Eric.
No problem.
So where does this leave us, right? We've got, I've given you a tangible action item this week, or actually this next month, is to make contact with your SOI very, very purposefully and have a script that you feel good about with some statistics, gives you the market leader edge, right? You're going to be the market expert. That's probably going to create action within your business all by itself. If you're really purposeful about going through this and you're texting maybe 10 people a day, trying to reach 3 or 4 or 5 a day, or whatever your number is, and really staying purposeful about that, that's going to be massive because you're not asking them necessarily to buy and sell. I did a little script in there with you, but this could be strictly just value-based, right? And then we've talking a little bit about the scar tissue of 2008 and what we're expecting in this future without the crystal ball. The next thing I think is the most valuable for you in my preparation for the call today is going to be your mindset. It's going to be your drunk monkey around this. I'm as optimistic as anybody. I literally live on that side of the coin in everything I do, but this is catching my attention pretty significantly. So guess what happens to the attention? The attention goes where the attention flows, right? So I am now much more in tune with Fox Business information in the morning, where I've kind of tried to tune the news out. I want to pay attention to what's going on. I want to find out what's going on with Terra. I want to find out what's going on with the airline buyouts, because all this stuff plays into the big picture. I got to be knowledgeable in that area. And I also want to have that conversation if somebody brings it up, right? But comes with it, Trump said this and that. Biden did this. Senator Bernie Sanders did this. It's still all there, right? So I really have to preserve my mindset of what I am exposed to. And all we have at the end of the day is our mindset. What we focus on expands. If you focus on the bad, I promise you, you'll find more bad. If you focus on the good and you do nothing but listen to me and Brent Gove and whoever else you attract to, Gary Vee, whatever it happens to be, if that's all you focus on, that's going to expand in your mind. Right? That's just reality. That's just real talk. So when we look at this, our SOI we're calling might be in this freak out mode. They might be on this area of uncertainty. You have to be that calming force, right? This is going to be important for you in your business. You know, words can destroy us. They can destroy our physical, our mental, our spirit, everything else, and they can also change us. So just really be cautious of that self-talk you're giving yourself right now. And is it a time to really play offense with our expenses? Absolutely. It's really a time, because we've been in this growth cycle that it seems like we could do no wrong, right? We could throw mud at the wall. We were making money in this market. And as the market turns, that will progressively change. So get lean and mean, get cash friendly, get cash heavy. And if you've done some things that have taken away your cash, get in front of those things, and whatever they may be, try to build your cash back up again. Not only is it going to be, you know, we had a staff meeting and talked about this exact thing this morning, because we've been in such a growth cycle, both in my organization, my company, and all around us. We've been just throwing cash at things because we're in a growth mode, right? So I'm still optimistic. I'm still growing, but now we're looking at, are these things critically important? And as we start scaling and start looking at places to get more cash friendly and cut back, what areas can we look at, right? Identifying those now, because as we progress, if we go into a down market, which what goes up must come down. If we go into that, are you going to be positioned to take advantage of it, right? There's going to be winners and losers. Are you going to be one of the winners that are positioned to take advantage of those opportunities? Are you going to find a house that was 400 grand, now it's 210, but it's all cash and you don't have it, right? So looking at these things, I think those are going to be powerful as we progress, and also getting in a place of being able to weather the worst that could come, right? Just being really prepared for that, but focusing on the growth and opportunity as you go. And then, you know, one of the things that I look at is inventory. When we look at inventory, housing starts have been behind the curve for a decade, if not two. We have not been able to build enough houses to keep up with demand. Builders work in about 5-year cycles. Can you imagine? This is where I'm glad I'm not a builder anymore. I was really never a developer doing 50, 60, 70 houses, but I was involved in many littler subdivisions and different things. The stress level of trying to guess what's going to happen in the next 5 years in the market is so difficult when you're breaking ground and getting into these, you know, you're spending money for 2 to 5 years prior to ever making the first sale. And can you imagine being a builder now in this market where they couldn't build houses fast enough, but now they've got a plan for 2, 3, 5 years in advance. And it's just, you know, it's an uncertain time when you get into that area, but inventory is what all this conversation revolves around, in my humble opinion. Inventory is going to be the jurisdiction for what happens in the next market. Inflation affects rates. All these things are somewhat effective. Wars affect distribution. Shanghai being closed because of COVID affects distribution and supply chain. All these things are somewhat related. But inventory, the supply and demand, people need to buy, people need to sell. That inventory is really what I look at. And remember, in 2008, 9, 10, we were looking at 18 months of inventory in my market. Some areas had more than 2 years of inventory. We've been operating in days, literally 2 days, 3 days, 7 days of inventory. So many of us have not been in that market to understand what 16, 18 months of inventory looks like, and what it looks like to put a listing on the market and having to relist it again in 6 months because it hasn't sold yet. That sounds like complete crazy talk to some of the people on the call. I'm sure some of the people listen to this, right? But that was reality. So that's what I have for this segment. I'm going to take questions about this particular content, and then we'll go off record and I'll get into any intimate questions or conversations or coaching or anything I could do to support or help you. But anything related around this content for now.
Hey, Randy, I have a question.
Hi, Melissa.
Do you foresee any repercussions for some of the people as we go into a down market that did, maybe pay exorbitant prices and, they're going to want to blame somebody. So I'm just curious, do we think there's going to be, an increase in lawsuits against agents, or certain things that where buyers who might have gone crazy with their pricing are going to try and go after people?
Yeah, I think that's a really valid question. And I've heard it about 3 times in the last week, so I know it's more valid. So number one, you're not going to be sued unless you gave bad advice or they could show that you did something on purpose maliciously. That's just such a rare situation. So really what we're talking about is we're identifying what's going on in the market. 5 weeks ago, I did a training in Salem with 600 agents. And I made a joke like, price reductions, why even bother talking about price reductions? We're getting 27 offers on the properties before they go active. So we're not even going to talk about price reductions in this training. If you're doing price reductions, you're like in the 80s. I said that 5 weeks ago. Right. And then I said, what you need to know how to do is negotiate. This is what I want to train you how to negotiate in this market. I want to train you how to get listings in this market, blah, blah, blah. Back in 2008, a listing was a dime a dozen. It was the buyers we needed. We didn't have enough buyers for the properties. If you got a buyer, it was like wrapping your arms around them and making them your cousin, because that's what the market needed, right? We had more listings you could find listings anywhere. And now we've got a completely different market, right? Buyers are a dime a dozen. And, I keep getting calls for people to sell me buyer leads like a month or 2 ago. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm trying to weed out my buyers. I'm trying to find less buyers, right? I want only the ones that are this. Again, we're going to change as this progresses, right? This thing. But to answer your question specifically, you might feel bad, but there's no legality to it. There's no teeth in the legal piece of it, even though they may on Facebook friend you over losing a couple grand, or a couple $100,000. But reality is they're buying at the market, right? The market is jurisdicting what the market is. If they didn't offer 100 asking or over asking, they wouldn't have got the property. They wouldn't have had that opportunity. May they lose 100 grand in the next year? Yep. It's real possible, especially super inflated appraisals where they were waiving appraisal gaps and all these things. Yes, that's a decision that was made by them. They didn't get coerced into doing it correctly. You may have recommended it. You may have said, this is what the market will bear. But I really think you need to let go of the fear of being sued over that. I think there will be some people that are going to look to deep pockets. That's just normal, right? We had a lot of lawsuits back in the downturn of 2008, same thing. But again, that was kind of on the broker level. It's not even on my radar for the record. There are agents that misled people, right? There are agents that may have said something in an email that may come up to be a challenge for them later. But if you followed the true, proper procedures and really went through your arm's length transaction and treated agents and buyers and sellers with that diligence, then I think you're 100% okay.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it personally. I'm just interested to see what happens, in the market. I'm in the Phoenix market, so things have been cuckoo.
It's the Wild West. I'm in the Bay Area in one of my markets, and then I'm in the Salem area. So we've got Portland and Vancouver and similar hot markets. But the reality is the buyers are going to point blame, right? But they also felt amazing about it when they made 18% appreciation last year. And so you're a hero if you sold it to them a year ago. You might be a zero if you sold it to them 2 months ago. But in reality, they're just following what's going on with the market, right? So it's just about having those calming conversations with them, in my opinion. But it is a tough one, you know. It's a tough one. Good question, Melissa. What else? Anything else coming up for you guys based on this, you know, contacting your database, what to say to them, talking about the market of 2008 and the scar tissue that is left over from that with a lot of people.
Where's your go-to for getting that market data in your area, Randy? Where you go to try to Keeping Current Matters is a great kind of a newsletter that talks about a lot about data. It's a real estate company called Keeping Current Matters, and I think it's called KKM or something like that. But that's one source. Inman News is another place that I try to bring in these multiple levels of information. Rex Real Estate just closed last week, literally closed the whole brokerage with a few hundred agents. They were the ones that had the national suit against NAR for commissions, and that was something worthy of watching. Yeah, it's KCM. Thank you. Keeping Current Matters. And so, you know, when you aggregate all those things, you start getting a basis of opinion where they seem like they're all tracking. And then I like following, Glenn Sanford, Gary Keller, Remax. I like following some of their programs. Adam Contos, which was the president of Remax, left, and he's got a podcast now. He talks a lot about economics and the future of real estate. All these things I kind of aggregate, Eric. But honestly, I think for me, it would be KCM, and then it would be Swanapools and some of those things that look at statistics. But at the end of the day, your MLS, if you go into your MLS, specifically, I happen to be in the same MLS as you. So you can go into the analytics and start watching the days on the market and see what's happening in the last week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Okay. The data is really, really easy to get now, especially from our MLSs. I can't talk, it's Monday morning. From the MLSs. And, you know, there's also a lot of other places that you could turn to for that.
So one of the objections I'm running into in talking with some sellers is like, well, just hold on to the property and rent it. Like this conversation about selling or renting is coming up for me a lot. I don't know if it's just for me.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. And it's really up to them, right? So I would make it all about them, because if you make it all about you or the market, it's going to be obvious that you're just in the sales breath position. You may need to have sales breath conversation with them, but I would stay curious. I would say, okay, I support you. What does that look like? What's the value of you renting versus selling and taking that nest egg of money? What would you do with that money, right? Or if the rental market is still very hot and we're looking for it to continue to do so, we're not expecting the fuel from, the massive amount of foreclosures and short sales we saw in 2008. We're not going to see that. We're going to see some, but even the forbearance and the loan mods and things that were going on during COVID really turned out to be kind of almost nothing. So we didn't see the massive amount of foreclosures and short sales and stuff because there were so many government programs trying to avoid that, right? And the government was smart enough to make sure that didn't happen again. And so by doing rent moratoriums and all these things, they slowed all that process down. And for instance, I heard from an attorney last week on our call, I think Russell had him on, matter of fact, he was talking about in LA, it was like almost a year to go through a notice of default and to evict somebody. It was like 6 months to a year just to get in the dockets. So that's preserved, the backlog has preserved a number of months that you're not going to have any inventory should that have taken hold, right? People started getting evicted and increasing rental units as well as housing units. But there's still a lot of preservation in place for people that have, suffered through COVID through that. So I don't suspect to see a big
foreclosure or short sale push outside a normal recessionary type number.
Yeah, but it's these people that are like, either way, it seems to be fine, like they have equity, so if they rent, they would be cash flow positive.
Yeah. So do you know their motivation, Anna?
Well, in one particular case, the sister died, and she's not.
I lost you. Your voice went away.
Sorry, it's probably my connection.
Yeah, that's better.
So the sister died and she inherited the property. It's paid off and she's not really sure, there's such a demand for renters over here too.
Okay.
And she seems to be like 50-50.
So here's what I'm hearing, and you tell me if I'm wrong. They inherited the property, it's paid for, so they have no debt on the property. There's an income opportunity from the property. So in my opinion, Anna, it's a question of, do they want to have the amount of money, call it 500 grand? What's the rough value of the house?
About 600.
About 600? Let's say 600, you're broken up. So let's say it's 600. So they got 600 grand they're sitting on, or they have let's call it a $2,500 a month income from rent, right? So I need to lay out what the differences are between the amount of money they're going to receive on rent income from that and the amount of equity they have, 600 grand. If it were me, I'd say, hey, let's go buy 4 rentals for the 600 grand. You could put 150 grand down on 4 different rentals and we can increase your income with your 600 grand. That's what I would do probably right off the bat, just mathematically, right? Because I think that would probably far outweigh their income opportunity. But what do they want? Do they want to deal with 4 more headaches, or are they happy with 2,500 a month and not a tax implication? So it's really questions about their needs. And then if their needs stack up to that, then I would be very forthcoming and say, okay, everything you've told me, Anna, you need to sell now. The market's never been higher, and the market's not going to be this high again in the future. So in my opinion, my professional opinion, because you're asking me, is I would sell that. I'd cash out my 600 grand. If you're not going to have a tax implication for 6 months or a year, maybe even sit on that money until the right opportunity comes along. We could probably get you multiple other investment properties if that's what you want. Or if you're looking to it, I can invest that money into some investors that may have a return on that investment that doesn't make you a landlord times 4 or 5, right? Depending on what they're looking for. Right. But by asking those questions, you get to the motivation of what they truly are wanting to do. And they may not know. It may be a series of questions and answers that lead them to a CPA or tax advisor, a financial advisor, expressing, their curiosity into other rental opportunities, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, that's when you can really help them decide what's best for them.
Right. Yep.
Helpful?
I've been asking some of those questions, yeah, and I think now I need to connect them with the CPAs and the estate planners so they can get even more information if they were not able to decide based on that.
Yeah, we just went through this in our family. We had a family member die and left a house that was unpaid or had no debt on it. And, we were evaluating with the family what was the best opportunity. And I had the exact same conversation, right? Do you guys want to be landlords? You're going to make $2,200 a month on a $500,000 house. Or you could cash that out, split it between the sisters, and then you guys have $250,000 to invest on your own. Do you want to hold it collectively? Do you want to hold it independently? It's just a series of questions to get to what they need and what they want based on what they're telling me. Because that's truly the needs analysis when it comes to real estate, right? All right. Anything else? I think we got a good topic today that's helpful for you guys. Thank you, Samantha. I appreciate that. I'm going to look at chat real quick. We have a bit of chat here that I haven't been able to look at. Okay. Do you think real estate being a hedge against inflation will be a secondary item in addition to lack of inventory to keep prices steady? Yes, I do. I think that all of it's related, right? We have a lot of consumer confidence that's being eroded right now because it's just dangerous in so many different categories. So yes, I do believe that those things are going to be correlated. If we can get inflation under control without going into recession, which I don't believe we can avoid a recession, just saying, a recession is only 2 quarters of negative growth. And so we're already on our way there. I don't see how they could turn it around in this second quarter. So I think by the third quarter, they're going to identify as us being in a recession. It doesn't mean the world's coming to an end. It's just a term in terms of economic growth. So again, then we'll start watching what inventory and rates and all these things continue. If they raise rates 6 more times, is there anybody on this call that doesn't think that we're going to be really impacted by that? You know, now the people that have not been in the business since, 20 years ago, because I've been in real estate 19 years and the rates have never been above 7%, right? And we're like one adjustment away from that, 1 or 2 maximum. So in my 20-year career, we've never had to experience that. But prior to that, cyclical in the real estate market, it was very common to be 18, 17, 16, 15, 14 rates as we were in the 80s and 90s. And then in the 90s, they really got this, the rates down into the 6% category. And then the 2005 rates were in the 5 and probably 5 to 6 category again, from my recollection. And then we went into these crazy territories through 08 through 10, where we saw 4 and then below 4. And then we saw below 3. I refinanced, I told you, at 2.25 in, I think, December, just the beginning of this year. Crazy, right? 2.25. I literally had a conversation with my dad saying, you're being scammed, because he got a thing in the mail saying they had a 2.25% rate like a year ago. And I was like, dude, I'm in the market. You cannot get a 2.25 fixed rate. It's just below prime. It's just, that doesn't work, right? But we got it. And so I was wrong. That's how crazy rates got down to. But are we in some kind of interest rate dementia that we can't get past the fact that 6% is still good money in real estate, right? 7%, it depends on the mathematical equations, but we're going to lose buyers along the way. And if they adjust them too far, then again, that pendulum's got to swing the other direction. And then they'll have to lower rates to to shore up the economy and start getting the economy moving again. So it's really a moving target at this point. The average home equity in the U.S. is a record high. The average mortgage holder now owns 185 worth of equity, and this increased from 48,000 in 2020. I don't know where I heard 300 grand. Thanks for correcting me. Russell put in that the average mortgage holder now owns 185,000 worth of equity, which sounds right to me. And this increased by almost 48,000 in 2021. So it went up 30% in 2021. The rapid rise partly driven by increased home price valuations over the same period as of May 2nd. So thank you for that, Russell. So Google it yourself, find out what it is that you feel comfortable with. Like I told you, disclaimer, I'd heard it a couple of times, but I didn't know if it was true. And then Sarah said, Russell, where'd you find that info? I'm sure he just Googled it, but it says Investopedia. And then amazing. Thank you, Russell and Sarah, for having that conversation. My county just went from over 2 weeks of inventory to just over a month. So it doubled in 30 days effectively, right? I know for certain my coaching client in Utah said they were less than a week and they now have almost 2 months of inventory. And it happened like all in 30 days. And now it's the market picked up again. So it had this big dip. And then, so that looks like most of the chat there. So anybody, by raise of hands, anybody want to go off recording and ask something that's a little more intimate, a little more vulnerable or anything while we're on the recording? Okay. All right. Well, hearing none, that's about all I have for you guys today. Hopefully it's valuable. You're probably going to see a theme over the next few weeks of items that we can do specifically to help you in your business right now. SOI mandatory. If you're not doing this, you're really missing the boat, because somebody's going to contact your people if not. And they're going to lean on the people that are providing them this knowledge and value right now. And I personally wouldn't come off in a sales breath conversation. I would come off like, I'm reaching out to you because I care about you. I'm reaching out to you because you're in my circle of influence. And I want my people in my circle of influence to know what's going on firsthand, hearing it from me. I do nothing but scour the market, the internet, and everything to find out what's going on in this housing market, both nationally and locally, hyper locally, right? Because they're looking for a hyper local expert when they make their next decision to buy or sell. They're not looking nationally. They may start there, but they're going to end up with the people they trust and know in the area. Yes, Melissa.
I have another question. What do you think about the people who are under contract with builders that haven't sold their current house? Like, so say they have, 15,000 they put down on their new build or something. And, let's say they don't have to move. They just, like, is it just something to keep an eye on if it's worth it for them financially to stay put or move, or?
Yeah, another great question, and probably going to be a controversial answer because I'm just calling what I see, and being a contractor 20 years and all these other things lead me to some conclusions that could be completely wrong. But my opinion, I'm entitled to it, right? My one opinion. But to answer your question, number one, we had the exact same market in 2008 and 9 when we had buyers in contract that got cold feet because the market was changing so rapidly. We had sellers that we had to continually educate on the fact that they're losing traction every day. So they need to be nicer. They need to say yes to inspection, repairs, and all these things, right? We had to educate them. We're going to have to do the same thing. And I don't know the numbers, there are already buyers canceling contracts just strictly out of gut feelings, and or they may have been moved out of the market a little bit pricing wise, right? We've had people that we've been looking for houses for the last 30 days. And what they threshold they had 30 days ago is gone. That threshold is different now. We moved the goalpost. And so the goalpost is moved. We have to now change, right? So I would just really hyper educate your people. If you have a buyer or a seller, they're different conversations, right? The buyer conversation, talk about rates going up and the fact that they may, if they lose something now over 10 grand, the rate increase may be 30 or 40 or 50 grand over the course of the loan, just a quarter point, right? So those are the conversations on the buyer side. On the seller side, it's like, if we're in escrow, do everything the buyer asks right now. I just want to prepare you. We need to close. And so the buyers know that they have more power. So they're going to be asking things. I just need you to get in your mindset that we're not where we were 30 days ago. We're in a very precarious position where if we don't close this particular escrow and we don't fight for it all we can, we may never see this price again. That's just real. We're hoping for the best, planning for the worst, right? My job is to plan and set troops up and booby trap and tripwires and everywhere over this place for your benefit without you knowing about it. You're just following the path. But if you get off the path, you're going to do something that I set up as a precaution, right? So that's just my style. Your style may be completely different, but that's the language that we would have with the seller to have them understand. Okay. Now, new homes, this is where I was going to get. I believe that new homes are going to suffer the most because they've got this multiple prong issue again. Material shortage has been a major issue. I know builders that are calling 18-month completion times from foundation now. 18 months. That's a 5-month cycle normally for a good reason, because they don't know what's going on in the market in 6 freaking months, right? So now they're having to buy materials and hire subcontractors that all labor is 30% higher than it was a year ago. All materials are an average of 30% higher than they were a year ago. Their lumber is starting to soften, but it went up 100%. Electrical wire that I bought for my whole career for under $60 is $250 a roll. Right? 20 years, I've been buying Romex from 22 to $60, and now it's $225 a roll. So that kind of stuff impacts housing that we can't control. So subs have more cost. Everything's going the wrong direction on the house itself. Prices are going to decrease, right? Supply, demand, inventory, I believe, increases. I think housing supply decreases. With that said, my disclosure is we're still critically short of new housing starts, critically short. But at some point, you see they can't just keep pushing the envelope with upgrades and all these things that they've been doing the last couple of years because the market was catching up with them no matter what they were doing. So I believe that the builders are going to put a hold on dirt starts. They're going to hold off on things that take 3 to 5 years to come to fruition and see how long this downturn is. Is it a bubble? Is it a blip? Is it a sinkhole? What is it? And so all these things are going to combine into that lack of inventory. And the builders are going to start getting aggressive. So we all know rates. I don't know the exact first rate increase. If somebody wants to Google it, I'd love to know it. So the day that they increased rates the first time, I believe, was right around April 1st, somewhere in that week. But think about that. Within 2 weeks of that rate increase, of the first increase, builders went back to paying commission to agents like that, like all the builders that my clients are all with, right? They recognized that that changed the market. And so they went back to traditional paying the agents to sell their houses, because prior to that, they didn't need us, right? The trend has been the builders going direct with their own lenders, their own everything. That trend's going to change now. The trend's going to get back to they need us to bring the buyers there, because we're the ones with the buyers, not the internet, right? Typically. So again, in my opinion, that housing is really a precarious space to be in. And if you're a 100% new home sales agent, then that's something to be aware of, because again, you were the king of the mountain the last couple of years because of inventory. But if we start changing the pendulum here, that you may be stuck with a lot of inventory and a lot of work and a lot of overhead for something that's, may not be built for a year to 18 months. And the fallout rate could be very significant. Because if they're in a construction contract with a $1,500 down, right? There's not very big downs on a new construction build. 10 grand is one of the highest I've heard. But even if it's non-refundable, which is very hard to make it non-refundable, but let's just say it's 10 grand, it's non-refundable. If they bought it at 750 and now it's at 650 in 8 months, that's an obvious thing, right? The builders have to pad that to make that up, because they've got to resell it at that new number regardless. So I think that's some of the unknowns that's still to follow. But right now they've been really loving the last couple of years because they couldn't build them fast enough. They had them sold. And if the builders are smart, they're going to close escrow somehow and keep these clients in play. But typically you don't close escrow until you get a certificate of occupancy. So it's a COO, you can't get the loan, you can't close unless it's hard monies and different things. So, that's the market that we're just not aware of right now. But from like I said, my background is in that space. And what I'm hearing because of that space is trusses are 5-6 months out. Even if you had a set of approved plans today, and then you went to the truss manufacturer, said, I need trusses, they're 5-6 months out. But you can't order trusses until you get to a later stage of the project. So all these things, are related to the material issues. Any questions along those lines? Things are getting better in the supply chain. You look at garage doors, seems like no big deal, right? Garage doors and gutters and all the metal, but springs were in a national shortage for a while. So you can get the garage door, you just couldn't get the spring. So I personally know 3 people that had big garage doors, including the one I'm looking at in my backyard of my neighbors. They couldn't get springs for the doors. So the doors wouldn't work. The doors were there. You had to physically lift them up. There were just no springs in the nation. So they had this national spring shortage. It was months and months and 6 and 7 months out. So that's just one thing, right? Think about all these things that go into this and the truck issue and things. So again, I'm kind of laughing because even hearing myself, it sounds like doom and gloom, but it's not. It's opportunity, and we just want to be aware of this. Yes, Richard.
I was just going to validate some of what you were saying. I was in a new home build project yesterday talking with the realtor, and she told me they had 2 fallouts just because of the rate increases in the last 14 days. So there's stuff out there, like you're saying, but she was running it down for me a little bit yesterday.
Yeah. And it's just maybe even a subtle switch right now. But remember 5 weeks ago, where were we at 5 weeks ago? 5 weeks ago, there was a sign on the door saying offers are coming on Sunday only. You can only preview the house. Don't call us until after the offers have been submitted. You're not allowed to bring your agent in the house. They're not getting paid. I mean, all these were just, this is how the new construction was operating over in this white hot market, So it's in many areas, I think this is really a good thing because we were superheated. We knew we were superheated. We had to cool down a little bit. I'm hoping that we get this soft landing they're talking about. We cool it down enough that it kind of feathers to the bottom of whatever the bottom is going to be. and we don't go past it. Again, if it goes past it, that's when there's opportunities on flips and there's different opportunities, right? But I really think that there's so many things in play here that it could be a very choppy up and down as we progress. So it's really going to be about that knowledge. Great, great content and great, takeaways and stuff today. Anybody have anything else before we wrap up? I'm here every single Monday, 9 or 10 to 11 Pacific time, new time. Thank you for being here. This will grow as we had a lot of confused people this week. My apologies. We switched it kind of quickly, but it laid out perfectly with some of the other stuff that we had in the calendar. But I think Monday's better for production calls, so we could really get into it. And then listen, if you want a little extra, just ask. If you want to talk to me privately, I'm happy to do that. We could do it after the calls. We could, whatever it is you have, I want to be here for you and not just make this about me. I want to make this a resource for you to plug into weekly that both gives you a little mindset, a little opportunity, a little marching orders for the week, some measurable action steps that you could do in your business. So if you were my coaching client and I was talking to you one-on-one, I would say, develop a 30-day game plan for this. What is your 30-day game plan for contacting your SOI? If it's just mathematical, say I have 220 people in my SOI, 220 divided by 30 equals 7.3 per week, right? So that means in this week, if I talk to somebody every single day, no, that math doesn't add up. What was that? 220 divided by 30 days is 7.3. So yeah, you'd have to contact about 70 people per week to get through your whole database in 3 weeks, right? So if you're going to do that, 70 people per week, that's about, 12 per day. That's a lot of people to contact per day. So you might have to look at it from a perspective of it may take you 6 weeks to get through your database. Or you might do a newsletter that says you're going to be reaching out to them shortly, whatever it may be. Okay. But I would put that action step into your business and how to get a hold of your SOI and let them know you're available for this conversation and have that little bit of script together about what's going on with it. And by the way, it's going to change. In 30 days, the content may be irrelevant. You might have to re-inform them, but that's what this is about. Okay. Because if you're not having the conversation, where are they getting it from? They're getting it from CNN, Fox News, and maybe even your competitor. Right. All right, everybody. Well, I appreciate you. Thank you for being here today. Looking forward to seeing you next week doing the same thing. And again, if you're on my Thursday calls, we'll see you there for an attraction call. But I appreciate you being here. Don't be afraid to invite your friends and clients or friends and other agents that you want to bring to the coaching call.
Thanks, Randy.
All right. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you, Randy.
Richard, appreciate it. Kenny, good to see you. Anna in Hawaii, I always forgot to call her out. She's always here early. Love you, Anna.
Thanks, Randy.
All right, you guys have a good day. Appreciate you. Bye for now.